Most people expect big moments to arrive with fanfare, but for Leora Arden, everything changed with a single, unexpected knock long after midnight. She had spent years building routine, keeping her world quiet and controlled. She worked her modest archival job, lived in her cramped top-floor apartment overlooking the harbor, and did everything she could to outrun the memories attached to one man, Kalen Miles. She had not spoken his name aloud in years. Not since the night she vanished from his life without a word. But as the wind rattled her windows and the distant foghorn moaned like some ancient warning, something inside her chest fluttered, a strange instinct tapping at her ribs with restless urgency. She tried to ignore it. She always tried. Leora wrapped herself in a faded blanket and settled onto her couch with a stack of old data journals she needed to review. She told herself she was fine, that she had moved on, that the universe had a strange way of closing doors exactly when they needed to stay closed. Yet she still avoided the northern district where he once lived. She still paused whenever she heard footsteps that nearly matched his. She still dreamed about the night they had stood beneath the pale blue lights of the orbital overlook, where he told her something she had never forgotten. Something she had never been brave enough to answer. Her kettle clicked off, and she rose to make tea, letting the warm steam calm her nerves. She tried to focus on the simple sounds of her apartment, the ones she relied on every evening. The hum of the old heater, the soft ticking of the wall clock, the distant echo of harbor ships. That was when the knock came. One soft tap. Then another. Her heart jolted, an unexpected, breath-stealing jump. The hour was far too late for visitors, and the way the knocking paused, those slow, careful beats, felt strangely familiar, like a rhythm she had once known by heart. She remained frozen for a few breaths, fingers curled tightly around her mug. The knock came again, firmer this time, and her chest tightened. She set her mug down and took slow steps toward the door. Her building wasn't the kind of place where people dropped by unannounced, especially not at that hour. She wondered whether she should call her neighbor across the hall, but something in her pulse, something deep and old, kept her moving forward. Another knock. A whisper through the wood. "Leora?" Her breath caught. She knew that voice. Even softened by the door, even rougher and deeper than she remembered, it was unmistakable. A voice she had once trusted more than her own. Memories flooded her so quickly she had to grip the doorknob to steady herself. She remembered the way he used to say her name, the quiet gravity in it. She remembered the hope in his eyes the night she ran. And she remembered why she left, why she believed she had to. She pressed her forehead to the cool metal of the door, trying to breathe. She wasn't ready for this. She wasn't ready for him, for everything she had buried. "What are you doing here?" she whispered, mostly to herself. "I know you're home," Kalen said gently. "I saw the light." Her pulse trembled. He sounded tired, worn, like he hadn't slept in days. Leora closed her eyes, torn between opening the door and running to the back window like she had all those years ago. But this time her feet stayed anchored. Something about the way he spoke, quiet, cautious, touched a place inside her she thought she had sealed forever. She swallowed hard and rested her palm against the door as though she could feel the warmth of his through it. "I shouldn't have come this late," Kalen added, "but I didn't know where else to go." Her chest tightened again. Why now? Why after all this time? The harbor wind howled outside, rattling the glass. The hallway beyond her door fell silent. Leora could sense him standing there, waiting, hoping she would answer. Part of her wanted to open the door. Part of her wanted to bolt it shut. Before she could decide, Kaylin spoke again, soft, almost breaking. "I just need to talk to you, please." Her fingers trembled on the lock. She drew a slow breath. And slowly, very slowly, she turned the latch. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. The door began to open, and everything she thought she had left behind rushed back in one breath. The door eased open only a few inches before Leora froze again, her hand tensed on the edge. Cold hallway air drifted in, carrying the faint scent of rain and something warm she couldn't name, something achingly familiar. Kaylin stood there, shoulders slightly hunched, his dark coat dusted with mist. His eyes, a deep storm gray she had once memorized without meaning to, lifted to meet hers. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Years of silence pressed between them like an invisible wall. He looked older, not in a way that dimmed him, but in a way that showed he had walked through something heavy. A quiet tiredness clung to him, and it tugged at her heart in ways she wasn't prepared for. "Hi," he said softly. She opened the door a little wider, but didn't step back. "Kaylin, why are you here?" He exhaled slowly, like even breathing felt uncertain. "I didn't know if you'd slam the door in my face or call security." Leora swallowed, trying to steady the sudden rush of emotion. "I haven't done either yet." A faint smile tugged at his lips. Sad, hesitant. True. Another gust of wind whistled through the hallway. Kaylin shifted his weight, like he wasn't sure if he should stay outside or take a risk and step inside. Leora hesitated only a heartbeat more before murmuring, "Come in, just for a moment." He stepped past her, moving with the carefulness of someone afraid to disturb the air. She closed the door quietly behind him, her pulse still unsteady. Kaylin looked around her small apartment, his gaze lingering on the stacks of journals and the half-empty tea mug. "It hasn't changed much," he said. "I like things simple," she replied, smoothing the blanket on the couch. "Predictable." He nodded, though the word seemed to sting him. Right, predictable. Leora folded her arms, unsure what to do with her hands or her thoughts, or the years she could feel pressing in on them. "You didn't come here just to talk about my decor." "No," he admitted, "I didn't." Silence stretched again. Gentle, but charged. "Finally," she asked. "Then what brought you here after all this time?" Kaylin looked down, his jaw tightening, as if he was searching for the right words. "I tried to stay away. I really did. I figured it was what you wanted." Her breath hitched at the quiet pain in his voice. "But a lot has happened since then," he continued, "and something came up that I couldn't ignore, something that involved you." Leora's stomach tightened. "Involved me? How?" "Not in a bad way," he said quickly. "Nothing dangerous, just important." He looked at her then, really looked, and Leora felt that old, familiar warmth she had spent years trying to silence. It unsettled her now as much as it ever had. "I wouldn't have shown up like this unless I absolutely had to," he added, "but I didn't know another way." Leora's voice came out softer than she intended. "You could have reached out earlier." Kaylin's gaze flickered, guilt clouding it. "I wanted to. I drafted messages so many times, but I kept thinking you didn't want to hear from me. You left so suddenly, and I had my reasons," she cut in, though her voice trembled. "I know," he said quietly, "and I'm not here to drag up what happened. Not unless you want to. I just needed to see you, needed to tell you something. Her heart beat faster. What kind of something? He hesitated, the words seeming to stick at the edge of his tongue. It won't make sense if I just blurt it out. I need to explain from the beginning. Leora gestured faintly toward the couch. Then start from the beginning. He sat slowly, hands clasped, eyes distant for a moment, as though he was gathering pieces of a story he never planned to tell. Leora stayed standing, a few feet away, unsure if moving closer would steady her or unravel her completely. I left the research program, Kaylin began, right after you disappeared. Her breath caught. You left? Kaylin, that program was everything to you. Not everything, he said quietly, pressed into her chest before she could stop it. He went on, voice low but steady. And after I walked away, I discovered something in the archives. Something about the old hybrid energy project we studied. Something buried deep, hidden in encrypted files. The kind of thing that could change everything if people knew. Leora blinked, confused. But why would that involve me? Kaylin lifted his eyes again, soft, solemn, and unbearably earnest. Because the files mentioned a name, yours. She felt the room tilt slightly. How? She whispered. Kaylin opened his mouth to answer, but just then a sharp noise cracked through the building, a sudden thud from somewhere below. Both froze. Kaylin slowly rose from the couch, eyes narrowing. That wasn't the wind. Leora felt a chill trace her spine. Something or someone was in the stairwell. And it was coming closer. The sound echoed again, soft but unmistakably deliberate. Leora's breath hitched as she instinctively stepped closer to Kaylin, her fingers brushing the sleeve of his coat. He glanced at her with a quiet reassurance, then shifted his stance as though ready to shield her if needed. The stairwell creaked. A slow, hesitant footstep. "Do you get visitors this late?" Kaylin murmured. "Never," she whispered. For a moment, the two of them simply listened. The heater hummed. The old pipes rattled. But beneath all that lived another noise, measured, patient, drawing nearer with each second. Leora swallowed and forced herself to breathe. Maybe it's just a neighbor. Kaylin gave a small, doubtful nod. Maybe. He didn't believe it, and neither did she. Leora took a step back, her hand brushing the edge of her kitchen counter for support. Memories of their university days flickered through her mind. Late nights in the observatory lab, the sound of Kaylin pacing behind her whenever he grew anxious, the warmth of his voice when he whispered her name across star charts and dim console lights. She had never seen him look frightened back then, but tonight something heavy shadowed his expression. The footsteps halted just outside her door. Long, heavy silence. Leora held her breath. Kaylin motioned for her to stay behind him, and she did. Even after all the years apart, her instinct was to trust him without question. He approached the door slowly and peered through the peephole. She waited, watching tension ripple across his shoulders. Then he stepped back from the door. "It's nobody," he said quietly. "Nobody?" she asked. He nodded. "No one's there." Leora felt her chest tighten. "But we heard." "I know," Kaylin's voice was low. "Someone might have realized you opened your door earlier. Maybe they were checking which apartment." "Checking?" Leora whispered. "Checking for what?" Kalen hesitated, his shoulders lowered, as if some invisible weight settled on him again. That's what I need to explain. He guided her back toward the couch, and they both sat, though Leora barely felt the cushion beneath her. Her pulse was still racing, but now another kind of tension churned beneath it. Kalen leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped tightly. The files I found, those old hybrid energy records, weren't just research notes. There were sealed reports, notes from the original directors, messages exchanged during test phases. Leora nodded slowly. So why would any of that involve me? Kalen exhaled, steady but strained. Because your mother worked on that project, and the reports suggested she left something unfinished, something she entrusted to one person, you. Leora froze. My mother? Her voice cracked unexpectedly. Kalen, my mother died when I was young. She never said anything about... She couldn't, he murmured gently. Most of the team had their work classified, but the files said she encoded something important, some kind of prototype encryption key, and documented that only you could access it. Leora shook her head slowly. That doesn't make sense. I've never seen any kind of key. I wouldn't know where to start. I think you already have it, Kalen said softly. You just don't know it yet. She stared at him, searching his face for any hint that this was some elaborate misunderstanding. But Kalen wasn't the type to chase shadows. If he had come all this way, it was because he believed every word. Why didn't you come to me sooner? She murmured. His gaze fell. I wanted to, but the closer I got to understanding what the project really was, the more I realized other people were looking for it too. Leora's pulse skipped. Other people? He nodded gravely. And they were looking for anyone connected to the original team. That's why hearing footsteps outside your door tonight worries me. She felt her fingers tighten around the couch cushion, trying to ground herself. Do you think someone followed you here? Kalen hesitated, then looked her straight in the eyes. Yes. The room fell painfully still. Leora, I wouldn't have shown up at your door if this weren't serious, but I need to find out what your mother left behind, and I can't do that without you. Leora's breath trembled. This can't be happening. I know, his voice softened, but you're not alone in it. Not this time. His words wrapped around her like a fragile promise, stirring emotions she had spent years burying. She looked away before he could see too much in her eyes. A soft tap suddenly echoed against her window, a gentle, deliberate sound that did not belong to the wind. Leora and Kalen both turned toward the glass. A shadow moved outside. Intentional. Right past her window. Leora's heart stopped. Kalen reached for her hand. Stay close, he whispered. The shadow slipped past Leora's window like a quiet ripple in the darkness, slow enough to see, yet too fast to identify. Her breath caught in her throat, and the room felt suddenly smaller, as if the walls were leaning in to listen. Kalen kept her hand in his, steady but alert. He moved with careful steps toward the window, but not close enough to be seen. Leora stayed right behind him, pulse thudding in her ears. Who would come here? She whispered. Kalen hesitated before answering. Someone who's trying to get ahead of us. But why me? Why now? He turned slightly, his voice low and reassuring. Because whatever your mother left, someone discovered its existence. And once they knew it was connected to you, they started looking. Leora pressed a hand to her forehead, trying to calm the trembling in her chest. She had always believed her mother was just a quiet researcher who rarely talked about her work. A gentle woman who loved puzzle boxes and old star maps. Someone who hummed soft melodies while tinkering with tiny mechanical toys. She never imagined her mother had been protecting something secret, something powerful. Kaylin motioned for her to step back from the window. They both retreated toward the center of the room. "I need you to think," Kaylin murmured. "Is there anything your mother left you? Something unusual? Something she told you never to lose?" Leora shook her head at first, then paused. An image rose unbidden in her memory, an old pendant shaped like a small silver crescent, given to her on her last birthday before everything changed. "She gave me a necklace," Leora said quietly. "I wore it when I was younger, but after she passed, I kept it in a box." Kaylin's expression sharpened with hope. "Does it open? Does it have anything inside it?" "I don't know," she whispered. "I never checked. I didn't want to break it." "Where is it now?" Leora didn't need to think. "In my bedroom." "Then that's where we start." They moved together down the narrow hallway, the old floorboards creaking beneath their feet. Leora's hands trembled as she opened the door to her bedroom. Moonlight spilled across her bed, illuminating stacks of old sketches and journals she kept tucked away. She crossed to her small dresser, pulled open the top drawer, and reached beneath a folded sweater. Her fingers closed around the cool, familiar shape of the pendant. When she placed it in Kaylin's palm, his breath caught slightly, not in surprise, but with a kind of reverence. "It looks like a crescent," he murmured, turning it carefully. "But see here?" He pointed to a barely visible seam along one edge. "This isn't just jewelry." Leora stepped closer. "What does it mean?" Kaylin didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a small breath and pressed the edge of the pendant with his thumb. A faint click sounded. The crescent separated, opening like a tiny locket she never knew existed. Inside was a miniature prism, no bigger than a raindrop, glowing faintly with a soft blue pulse. Leora's heart skipped. "What is that?" Kaylin stared at it in awe. "Your mother created something advanced, far beyond the energy models her team was working with. This is a stabilizing prism. If the records were right, it's the missing component of the hybrid system they abandoned years ago." "And someone wants it," Leora whispered. "Someone wants control over it," Kaylin corrected softly. "But your mother didn't trust the project enough to let them have it, so she hid it in the safest place she knew." Leora swallowed hard. "With me?" Kaylin nodded slowly, gently closing the pendant again to hide the prism. "She believed you would know what to do with it, or that you would find someone who could help you." Their eyes met, soft, searching, full of unspoken history. Before either could speak, a sudden vibration rattled Leora's window. Not a knock, not the wind, something sharper, more urgent. Kaylin stepped instinctively between Leora. A faint, metallic scrape sounded outside, then a soft, deliberate tap on the glass. Someone was still out there, watching, waiting. Leora's hand tightened around Kaylin's sleeve. "What do we do?" Kaylin drew a steady breath, voice calm but edged with determination. "We leave, right now. We take the pendant, we get to somewhere safe, and we figure out the rest." "But where would we go?" she whispered. Kaylin looked at her, his voice low and certain. "There's only one place they won't expect us to go, and it's a place we once promised we'd never return to." Leora's breath caught. The old observatory? Kaylin nodded slowly. Outside, the tapping on the glass grew sharper. The window latch trembled. Leora grabbed her coat with trembling hands while Kaylin double-checked the pendant, slipping it safely into an air pocket. The tapping at the window sharpened, like someone testing the latch with growing impatience. Every sound made Leora's breath tighten. Kaylin guided her toward the door. "Stay close. Keep your head down." She nodded, her heart racing as they slipped into the dim hallway. The air felt colder here, the quiet somehow heavier. Kaylin listened for a long moment before motioning her forward. They moved quickly down the stairs, the old building groaning beneath their hurried steps. When they reached the main door, Kaylin peered through the narrow glass pane. No one outside. "Are you sure?" Leora whispered. "Not completely, but we can't stay." They pushed through the door and stepped into the night. The air was crisp, the harbor wind carrying a salty edge. Street lamps cast long pools of gold across the pavement, but shadows gathered between them like pockets of uncertainty. Kaylin placed a steadying hand on her back. "We head north. Stay in the light." Leora followed him through the quiet streets, her breath forming soft white clouds in the chilly air. The city felt different at night, emptier, more fragile. Every distant footstep made her nerves jolt. As they walked, memories stirred. Nights when she and Kaylin used to wander the university campus long after midnight, whispering theories and teasing each other about who worked too much. She had loved those nights more than she ever admitted. And she had missed them more than she dared to remember. "You never stopped studying the project, did you?" Leora whispered. Kaylin shook his head. "Not after you left. I thought if I buried myself in work, maybe I wouldn't think about—" He stopped mid-sentence, glancing at her as though unsure whether he should continue. Leora's voice softened. "About what?" Kaylin let out a breath that carried years of unspoken truth. "About losing you." Her steps faltered, emotion rising so suddenly she had to look away. "I wasn't trying to hurt you. I just didn't know how to stay when everything felt so overwhelming, and I didn't want to drag you into my uncertainty." "You weren't dragging me into anything," Kaylin said quietly. "I chose to care about you." His words settled in her chest with warm weight. She couldn't respond, not yet. All she could manage was to keep walking beside him, hoping he understood the gratitude she couldn't form aloud. The observatory soon appeared on the hill ahead, its domed silhouette rising like a forgotten monument against the night sky. The building had been abandoned for years, but for Leora and Kaylin, it held memories of brilliant ideas, late-night laughter, and a quiet, almost confession they had both been too afraid to finish. They climbed the final slope, breathless from the cold and the rush of it all. Kaylin pushed open the warped side door, guiding her into the darkened entry hall. Dust coated the floor, and the air smelled faintly of metal and old starlight. Inside, Leora felt strangely safe. Kaylin led her toward the main dome room. He flicked on a small pocket light, casting a gentle glow across the space. The giant telescope loomed above them, frozen in time. Leora hugged her arms around herself. Why would they not expect us to come here? Because no one goes back to the places they ran from, Kaylin said softly. Except, maybe we needed to. He pulled the pendant from his pocket and held it between them. If the prism is what I think it is, it needs alignment, something stable enough to reveal its data. This telescope has the old calibrator your mother helped design. It might react to the prism. Leora watched as he carefully opened the pendant again. The tiny prism glowed with that same soft blue pulse, almost like it recognized the room. Kaylin leaned closer. Help me stabilize it. Together, they placed the prism into the telescope's auxiliary cradle. A faint hum vibrated through the metal, and lines of light shimmered across the prism's surface. Slowly, shapes formed, soft, fluid patterns that looked almost like constellations. Leora stared. It's a map. Not a celestial map, Kaylin murmured. A coded path. A message your mother left for you. Leora felt her breath catch as the light coalesced into a single, shimmering symbol she had seen before, in her mother's old journals, hidden among sketches she never understood. A message meant for her alone. She touched the symbol gently, tears prickling her eyes. She wanted me to see this. She wanted me to know. Kaylin placed a hand over hers. Warm, steady. You're not facing this alone anymore. Leora turned to him, emotion welling so deeply it nearly broke her voice. I'm sorry I left without saying goodbye. His expression softened, full of quiet relief and something deeper. You came back to me tonight. That's what matters. The prism dimmed slowly, its message stored safely in Leora's heart now. Outside, the night settled into calm, the danger fading like a shadow that had lost its purpose. Leora leaned toward Kaylin, her voice trembling with honesty she had avoided for years. I spent so long running from what I felt, but when you knocked tonight, I realized I didn't want to run anymore. Kaylin's eyes warmed, gentle and unwavering. Then don't. For the first time in years, Leora felt something steady beneath her feet. Not fear, not uncertainty, but hope. Together, beneath the quiet dome where their story once began, they stepped forward into whatever came next. And for the first time in a long time, Leora didn't look back.